Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Humanities Initiatives Grant Program offered by the National Endowment for the Humanities. My name is Julia Wynn, a program officer in the Division of Education Programs and part of the leadership team for this program. And joining me today is my colleague, program analyst Emily Brantley. This webinar is recorded, but we will also be hosting a live question and answer session for the Humanities Initiatives program on Wednesday, March 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find the link for the session on the Humanities Initiatives program page at neh.gov. This webinar is designed to provide examples and explanation in support of the guidelines, also known as the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, available at the program web pages, which can be reached by going to neh.gov. These guidelines are for applications submitted during the 2022 cycle to fund projects beginning as early as February 2023. Please note that this recording is not a replacement for the specific requirements laid out in the NOFO, and when questions arise, you should first reference that document. I will begin with an overview of the purpose and goals of this program, and then move into specific requirements and questions to consider as you develop your application. Please know that we provide sample narratives and are available to answer questions and review optional draft proposals during the application process. I will discuss these further near the conclusion of this recording. Humanities Initiatives grants strengthen the teaching and study of the humanities at institutions of higher education by developing new programs, resources, or courses, including those in digital formats, or by enhancing existing ones. Projects must be organized around a core topic or set of themes drawn from humanities areas such as history, philosophy, religion, literature, and composition and writing skills, to name just a few. Remember, you're applying to the National Endowment for the Humanities, so keep the humanities at the core of your project. NEH welcomes applications that are modest in scope, duration, and budget, as well as applications for expansive, long-term projects. These grants are designed to be flexible to fit your projects and your institution's needs. Essentially, if you want to do a project that will impact humanities teaching and learning at your college or university, and you can do it in 1 to 3 years for $1 to $150,000, this might be the grant for you. This program supports a wide range of activities, from foundational curricular planning to creating or revising bridge programs, dual enrollment programs, majors, minors, certificates, concentrations, honors programs, first-year seminars, capstone courses, and pathways to graduation or transfer to four-year institutions. It supports developing or enhancing curriculum-focused resources like oral histories, films, teaching modules, podcasts, mapping tools, and guidelines on how to use these humanities resources in the classroom. But wait, there's more. It also supports opportunities for faculty members to study together to improve their capacity to teach the humanities. Partnerships and collaborations with museums, libraries, historical societies, and other institutions of higher education, local K-12 school systems, and other institutions are welcome. I would emphasize here that while partnerships and collaborations are welcome, projects should serve a key audience of students and/or faculty from the applicant institution itself. These are just some ideas of what you can do with this grant. Again, it's flexible and can be tailored to support your institution's humanities needs. There are 5 different branches of Humanities Initiatives programs. In addition to the overarching colleges and universities program, there are also branches that specifically serve tribal colleges and universities, historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, and community colleges. You may find that your college or university is eligible to apply under more than one of these branches, but you'll need to pick which one branch you'll submit your application to. For example, let's say your school is an HBCU. You could come in to the HBCU program or you could come in under the broad category for colleges and universities. You're allowed to choose whichever branch you prefer, but we recommend, if you're eligible, to apply under one of the more specific branches rather than under the broad colleges and universities category. Each program is reviewed separately, and reviewers will be drawn from the types of institutions represented. For example, review panels for humanities initiatives at HBCUs would have reviewers who are HBCU faculty or administrators, and would therefore have more insight into those institutions' needs and concerns than reviewers in the more general humanities initiatives at colleges and universities program might have. Your project may also be a good fit for another NEH grant program. Humanities initiatives projects that connect humanities and non-humanities departments, for example, may also fit under our Humanities Connections grant program, whose applications are due in September. However, because these two programs have overlapping review periods, you must choose whether to submit your project to one or the other, because you cannot submit multiple applications to NEH for essentially the same project. If you or your institution want to apply for more than one project, that's absolutely allowed, as long as they are different and unique projects and don't have overlapping costs. There's no limit to how many different applications one institution can submit under this grant opportunity. The key here is that you can only submit one application per project. Projects may, but need not be, related to the cultural identity of the applicant institution. For example, it would be allowable for a Hispanic serving institution to submit a proposal on African American literature, or for a tribal college to submit a proposal on Shakespeare or any other humanities topic. We welcome all humanities topics in this program. Additionally, please know that projects do not have to fit within or address one of the NEH areas of interest listed in the NOFO that you see here on the slide. These simply allow NEH to feature certain themes and to encourage applications to these areas of emphasis. At NEH.gov, within the program webpage, you can find a wealth of information, including frequently asked questions and important program dates. We also offer several sample narratives as examples of well-written applications. Each of the 5 branches has different sample narratives, though all of them could be helpful to you as examples of humanities initiatives projects. So we strongly recommend exploring the samples of each of these 5 pages. These samples are not complete applications. Some of their attachments have been redacted, but they contain the narrative, reading lists, work plans, and other key attachments that could be helpful resources as you write your own application. Before we go any further, a bit more on eligibility. It is important to ensure that you are affiliated with an eligible college or university, because this program prohibits individuals from applying. U.S. accredited public or 501c3 private institutions of higher education are eligible to apply, and additional eligibility details for each branch of the program are in the eligibility information section of the NOFO. Individuals, federal, foreign, and for-profit entities are not eligible to apply. Collaboration with other organizations is welcome, but project directors must be employed by the applicant institution. The NOFO, or Notice of Funding Opportunity, is your blueprint for how to build a strong application. So we encourage you to become very familiar with this document and to use it as your roadmap to success. Just a bit on how the NOFO is organized. The first few sections are descriptive: what the program is about, what we're looking for, who's eligible, and so on. Section D provides the specifics of exactly what to include in your application and how to format it. And it includes an application components table, which you can use as your checklist to make sure you've included everything you need. Check here for things like page limits and how to save and title your attachment files. You'll also want to pay attention to the review criteria in Section E. This program has 4 review criteria: intellectual quality, design quality, feasibility, and potential for significant impact. They are spelled out in Section E through a series of questions, and these are the same questions that reviewers will use to evaluate your proposal. As you write your application, keep these review criteria in mind.
The narrative is the most important part of your application because it contains the substantive intellectual components of your project. Your narrative should contain these 6 sections, which you can find detailed in Section D of the NOFO under Application and Submission Information. Refer to this document for the specific questions you should address under each of these section headers. We encourage you to organize your narrative in this order, using these section headers and taking care to address each of the respective questions for each section, as this will help reviewers know exactly where to go to find the information they're looking for. The narrative should be no more than 8 single-spaced pages with 1-inch margins and a font size no smaller than 12 points. You'll notice that each section is tied to one or more of the review criteria, which can help you understand how each section will be evaluated during the review process. In the intellectual rationale section, you'll want to explain why now, what makes your project compelling, what makes your project important to your institution and to the humanities, what kind of impact will your project have, and what audience will it serve? Connect it back to teaching and learning at your institution. Narrative space is limited, so we like to encourage applicants to give a thorough overview and use specific and strategic examples to illustrate points and bring your application to life for the reviewer. If intellectual rationale is the why, content and activities is the how. How will you make your project happen? What are the texts and resources that will serve as the foundation for your project? What are you going to do during your project and why? Think of this as a space to summarize and highlight key pieces from the detailed work plan and reading list you will include as an additional attachment. Contextualize within the bigger picture of your narrative. Go beyond a simple schedule or list of readings to explain the rhyme and reason for how your project will unfold and why you've chosen to do it this way. This section is your opportunity to take us inside your project so we can actually see and imagine it unfolding in real life. The intellectual quality of your project relies heavily on the quality of the directors, institutional and visiting scholars, consultants, and contributors involved with your project. Grant funding can be used to bring visiting scholars and experts to your institution, as well as to work with local experts such as museum professionals, library or archive staff, public, oral, and local historians, and others. The resumes for key personnel attachment is a great place to include additional details about your project team that you cannot fit into the narrative summary. We recommend a 2-page resume for each key person on your team. We also strongly recommend securing and including letters of commitment from each of the individuals, entities, and organizations you'll be working with as part of your project. These letters can be simple email exchanges or more formal letters. Reviewers just want to see confirmation that these people are legitimately on board. Some other items to note. 1. Students can be paid for work done on your project, but NEH funds cannot be used for tuition remission or to pay for work done for academic credit. And 2, the institutional grant administrator will handle budgeting and institutional requirements on your end, as well as facilitating official interactions with the NEH. The grant administrator and project director must not be the same person. The institutional context section of your narrative will put your project in a larger context by explaining the situation of the humanities at your institution and how your project will fit into that context. Has your institution made any previous attempts to address project objectives, or does this project build on a previous NEH grant? If so, provide some background. Do you plan to collaborate with any other organizations? Are there any institutional resources you will draw on? This information will help reviewers understand how your project will fit within the curricular context of your institution. This section will be supplemented by your 1-page institutional profile and your institutional letter of support attachments. When thinking of who to select to write your letter of institutional support, you want to balance getting the highest ranking academic official possible, say your dean, provost, or president, with having someone who can write a thoughtful and personal letter that demonstrates familiarity with and full-bodied support for your project. NEH reviewers will also want to see the institutional impact that you envision for your project. What do you hope to accomplish as a result of this project? How will your project benefit students, faculty, and/or your community? And how will you communicate your successes to others? How can you extend the reach of your project, either at your institution or with a wider audience? And finally, every educator's favorite, evaluation and assessment. This section will eventually tie into the annual and final reports for NEH that will be required of funded projects. NEH does not require a specific assessment format or method. You should create an evaluation plan that will best assess the goals and benchmarks you have identified for your project. Generally, we do recommend that evaluation plans include both formative and summative evaluation and include both quantitative and qualitative measures as appropriate. Your narrative and attachments should be succinct, self-explanatory, well-organized, and free from technical terms and jargon. You want to balance breadth and depth, being at once clear and concise, while also being sufficiently descriptive and illustrative. You are writing your application for an audience of any reviewers, so write with both specialists in your field and generalists from outside your field in mind, as both will be reviewing your application. As you're adding attachments to your grants.gov application package, be sure to only attach PDFs. If you accidentally attach a Word, Excel, JPEG, or other file, your application will be automatically marked as ineligible by our system. So please make sure that you and your institutional grant administrator are careful to only include PDFs as attachments. Aside from the narrative and subsequent attachments, your application will also include a budget using the research and related budget form that's preloaded in your grants.gov application portal. You'll complete this form within grants.gov and it will automatically integrate into your application, so you do not have to include it as a separate attachment. Because this is a government-wide form, be sure to read pages in the NOFO on application and submission information for how exactly to fill out your budget form for this grant program's purposes. Note that all projects are required to submit a budget justification to complement the budget form itself. This can be in any format you choose: bullet points, a narrative, spreadsheets and tables, or some combination of the above. Just be sure to attach this PDF as justification.pdf to your budget form. Speaking of NEH funding, it's also important to be aware of NEH's funding restrictions. You can find a more complete listing in the funding restrictions section of the NOFO, but we want to caution you against some of the most common pitfalls we see. The NEH cannot fund the promotion of particular political, religious, or ideological points of view, advocacy for a particular program of social or political action, or support of specific public policies or legislation. The best antidotes to these are to 1. Include diverse and varied voices, scholars, and sources on any topic, but especially for things that might be considered hot topics. 2. Present participants with unbiased information and allow them to draw their own conclusions. 3. Root contemporary, real-world issues in the humanities, especially history, and focus on that humanities content in your application. And 4. Avoid buzzwords, language, and goals related to advocacy and activism, especially for hot topic issues. What you might see as the application of the humanities to real-world situations, a reviewer might see as advocating for a particular cause, but by being cautious of differing viewpoints, you should be able to sidestep these sticky areas. The NEH also cannot fund projects that fall outside of the humanities. We most often see this with projects that try to incorporate the creation or performance of art, or projects that involve participants doing creative writing, autobiographies, memoirs, or creative nonfiction. We also sometimes see this with projects that focus on basic foreign language instruction, social science research, or policy studies, or projects that focus on pedagogy or methodology. We value effective pedagogy and sound methodology, but your project must be driven by humanities content. Again, the NEH cannot fund tuition fees for student assistance, nor can it fund work undertaken in pursuit of an academic degree or individual research project. Additionally, the NEH cannot fund things like social events, banquets, alcohol, or entertainment. Drafts are optional, but they're one of the best ways for you to get detailed and specific feedback about your application from an NEH program officer. Drafts should be submitted via email to hi@neh.gov by March 28, 2022. I recommend sending your materials as email attachments. We aim to complete these and return feedback as quickly as possible. Please know that we cannot review drafts submitted after March 28th. The narrative is generally the most helpful item to include, but you're welcome to include other attachments like your reading lists, work plan, and budget, especially if you have a particular question you'd like our program officers to address. If you're struggling to pull together a full narrative in time for the draft deadline, you're also welcome to send a sketch or outline of your project for more general feedback. If you'd prefer to have a phone conversation to answer questions rather than submit a draft, please reach out to schedule a call. Reach out with whatever you've got, because some feedback is better than no feedback. Of course, the more complete, the more helpful the feedback that can be provided. Final applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on May 9th. Instructions on how to submit your final application via grants.gov are included in the NOFO. Please note, only complete applications submitted through grants.gov by the deadline will be reviewed. Don't wait until the last minute in case of technical issues and to account for processing time to validate in the grants.gov system. It's also a good idea, especially if you're at a larger institution, to check with your institutional grant administrator or your grants office to see if they have an earlier internal deadline you'll also need to be aware of. When getting ready to submit your final application, the first step is to ensure that your SAM.gov and grants.gov registrations and passwords are current, because NEH will not grant deadline extensions for delayed registration. Registration in these systems can take up to a month to complete, so check on this straight away. Remember, you're applying as an institution, so you will probably be using your institution's account information. Your institutional grant administrator or other grant management or sponsored program staff are great contacts for guidance if you're not sure where to find this information. When you're in grants.gov, be sure to select or have your grant admin select the appropriate package based on your project type, so your application is evaluated appropriately. That is, for example, be sure to select the package for, say, HBCU versus colleges and universities correctly. This is a very common error, so be sure to double check with your grant administrator that you or they have got the correct package for your project. Once you've pressed send, the waiting game begins. In July or August, applications will go to peer review panels for initial review. These panels consist of humanities scholars and past project directors, whose input forms the foundation for subsequent recommendations. In November, applications will go before the NEH's National Council on the Humanities, and afterwards, final funding decisions will be made by the NEH chair. We expect decision notifications to be made in December for grants beginning as early as February 1st and as late as September 1st. As noted in the NOFO, we expect to award around 20 projects in this cycle, spread out among the Humanities Initiative's 5 branch programs. You can find each branch's 3-year averages by scrolling to the bottom of its respective program page. That said, we do not know going into any review panel, or even when the National Council convenes, exactly how many projects will ultimately be funded. Regardless of the outcome, You can get the most out of your relationship with the NEH by asking for your reviewer comments once decisions have gone out in December, contacting us for additional feedback or guidance, volunteering to serve as an NEH panel for an inside look at how the process works and what makes a strong application. You can sign up at this link or find it by Googling NEH Panelists Sign Up. And applying again for this and other grant opportunities.
So with that, thank you so much for joining us. Here is our contact information, which is also listed online and in the NOFO. And please don't hesitate to reach out with questions and drafts. We look forward to hearing from you and hopefully working with you on a project of your own. Thank you again for your time and interest in the NEH's Humanities Initiatives Grant Program.